Block number 2. Good evening. Welcome in RNQ Izino classes. Block number 2. Structure of finite being. Unit number 1. Being and essence. 1.1 Introductions. Human finds oneself confronted by two types of being in the world: finite things and infinite persons. They are distinguished by their unique relationship to being. Things participate in beings according to the essence and strive towards the fullness of being accordingly. But the things can't distinguish being from its concretions in essence. Hence their accusations does not break through to being itself and ultimately make explicit the essence. Hence things remain blank for themselves, and for other things they are of themselves silent partners. For human in persons, the human encounters belong like himself, that is other fellow human beings. The human participate in being through their essence in such a way that in their accusations that they at once distinguish being from essence, and so attend to being itself. In other words, the human person is capable of complete reflections on oneself. By virtue of these reflections, the human can reduce the outermost externals of things to the most intimate and inwardness of being itself. Hence we see an essential connection between person and being in things. Being is alienated from itself will in the person. It is at home or has possessions of itself. Consequently, things appear as diamond-side beings over which human persons of experiencing against agents through tower as full be. Tower of being is most intrinsically persons appearing in its own self as person. That is why an understanding of being calls for an analysis of the metaphysical structure of the human person. The experiencing agent is as structures as one operations is as the operation is, so the agent is the operation is composed of exercise and determinations. Hence the experiencing agent person must also be composed. The experiencing agent is composed of the being essence and essentia is composed of substances, and accident substances is composed of prime matter and substantial form. The prime matter is in potency, whereas the substantial form is in act. The finite being has to be identical being with being, for being is immanent in this finite being. Because this identity is not perfect, because alongside this being there are also other finite beings. Being insofar as it is immanent in this being through a certain identity is not a unqualified being. For unqualified being and transcendence, the particular being, the immanent being, is a modified finite and limited being. It is the proper being of the particular being. The limit principle essence is neither being nor being. Nevertheless, the limiting principle constitutes this being as his being, and express the modifications of the unqualified being into a limited being. This and nothing else. Whatever essence has, it derives from the relative positions to being, to which as a modifying principle it refers by its whole nature, and from which has also its modifying capacity. Hence being itself be modified or limited and according to the Limitation: the finite being participates in unqualified being. The unqualified being, which transcends all modes, does not fully coincide with the proper being of each being, which is only in a limited way. That finite being is through participation in unqualified being. To explain this participation, we must admit that within the finite being there is distinction between proper being and the principle through which is being becomes its own limited being. That its own being as being transcends all modes of being, and therefore all modifications through essence build. The essence is fully relative to being. However, in the finite being, has let itself be modified. In a sense, the essence is prior to being insofar as the mode modifies being. This priority is not absolute, for the mode also arises from being, which includes in itself the possibility of being finite, becoming incarnate in the finite. Hence, being is prior to essence. For the being makes the mode of being. Perhaps the unqualified being points to a ground which is transcendent, not only relativity to finite beings, but absolutely our experience of something reveals the ontological difference between being. The beings are posited in and by being act of existing. The beings are not being itself. This difference implies the finiteness of beings, the finiteness of the being as a condition of possibility of all inquiry, in which we inquire whether it is and what is it. The first person inquires but the beings are acts of existing, acts of being, and the second about of the being essence, whatness, or quality. 1.2 Characteristics of being. Being essay as the principles of reality of being should be something process, no act of existing, but only an essence. Then it is a merry possibles and not real. The real differs from the possible because of being. In other words, being is that in a being which makes it real, distinguishing it from a merely possible being. Being is the inner principles or inner principles are being simply as a mere state into which a previously constituted essence would somehow be transformed. It is a rather that which makes real whatever is real, including all determinations of a being, including its whatness. Hence, being is the universal ground or principle of all beings, and the determinations. Being as objective of the pure desire to know. Being is the objective of the pure desire to know. The desire to know means the dynamic orinations manifested in equations for understanding and reflection is the fundamental derive. The carries the cognitions process from essence and imaginations to understanding, from understanding to judgment, and from judgment to the complete context of correct judgments called knowledge. It is simply the inquiring and critical sprite of human. It moves of human to seek understandings, and then it prevents one from being merely content with one's own imperfect subject personal experience. This desire is pure as it differs radically from other desires by completing assent to the unconditioned. Pure desire is a cool, disinterested, the detached desire, being as unrestricted notion at the root of all that can be affirmed or conceived is the pure desire to know. It is the pure desire that underlines all judgment and formulations, all questions, and all desire to questions the objections only of questions, but also of grounds on which they are questions. In other words, there is a cool, detached, disinterested desire to know at the root of cognitional process, and its range is unrestricted. Such an unrestricted notion notion is being. Being is spontaneous notion. There is a distinction between the spontaneously operative notions and theoretical accounts of its genesis and content. The spontaneously operative notion is invariant. It is common to all human beings. It functions in the same manner, irrespective of what theoretical account of it a human may come to accept the theoretical account of the content, the genesis of the notions, and numerous they vary with philosophical context. Spontaneously operative notions is present invariant in all the notions of being. Is such a notions present in all, and thus extends to everything that is known and unknown. It is true that being is known in a judgment. It is in judgment that we affirm to or deny until we are able to affirm the or deny. We do not yet know, although being is known only in judgment. The notions of being is prior to judgment. For judgment supposes reflection. Reflection proposes being, which is invariant to itself or spontaneously operative. It is all pervasive and underpins the cognitional contents and penetrates them all, constituting them as cognitional. All cognitional contents such as ideas and concepts are responses to the desire to know, and all judgments are responses to the demand for the unconditioned. It is the notions of the to be known through that content which is prior to every content. The to be known through the content passes without received into the known through that content. As each content emerges, the notions of being also constitutes all contents as cognitional. Can be no levels of knowing: experience, understanding and judgment. Experience is the first level of knowing. It presents the matter to be known. Understanding is the second level of knowing. It defines the matter to be known. Judgment is the third level of knowing, by which the experience is thought, and the thought is affirmed or denied. Hence being is really known is judgment, by which it is known as being. Hence knowing being, yet the known is never merely being. Just as judgment is never a merely yes, apart from any questions that yes answers. Being as the core of meaning. The notions of being is the core of meaning, as it underpins all contents, penetrates them, and constitute them as cognitional. As we have already seen, meaning can be distinguished from the viewpoint of its sources, actons, and the core sources of meaning is any element of knowing, such as date, images, the ideas and concepts, the graphs of the unconditions, and judgment, the details and unrestricted desire to know. Acts of a meaning are of the three kinds: formal, fall, and instrumental. The formal act as the meaning is an act of conscious thinking, considering, defining, supposing, and formulating. The full act is an act of judging. The instrumental act is the implementations of all formations of a full act by way of words or symbols in a spoken written or merely imagined utterance. The all-inclusive terms of meaning is being, since apart from being there is nothing in this way. The core of all act of meaning is the intention of being or given judgment. Patience to the concept of judgments. It is from the contents that the meaning of the given judgment is determined. For the meaning of the judgment is an element in the determinations of the universal intentions being. beings has the appearance of being. The objectivity of being is conditions by the pre-apprehension human knows about being in general in one's active dealings with the world. One knows about insofar as such knowledge is the conditions or horizon of objective conceptual knowledge of material beings. These material beings are the initial starting points and hence also the permanent basis of all cognitions. Thus human ever remains dependent on these starting points even in transcendental reflections on being in general. During the course of such reflections, the object of knowledgeable may be changed by the structure and the way in which these objects have to grasp remains unchanged when being is conceived. It is to be conceived in the manner of an object in the world, in the manner of an appearance. Being is general, and all that is immaterial is conceived in the manner of material beings. That is to say, it is considered as the being which has being one kind conceivable thing existing in itself in any other way. Hence the origin of all human concept is through the senses. Even non-material beings can't be comprehended by humans apart from reference to an appearance through which with these non-material beings becomes a datum. Hence being both indirect knowledge and in metaphysical reflections can be grasped only through being that appears even general is disclosed to humans in the appearance of beings insofar as these most general definitions of being is general are known through beings. Human becomes aware of these ontological differences between being and being in the act and fact of questioning. Questions is something final and irreducible. Every attempt to place the questions in questions, that is to questions these questions itself, again raising a question. So human are bound to questions. Hence it is the absolute fact which refuses to the replaced by another fact. These questions is metaphysical questions. These metaphysical questions is the reflexive articulations of the questions about pervades the ground of human existence itself. It turns upon itself as such, and thereby turns upon the prepositions of the questions. The transcendental questions does not merely place something acts about in questions, but also the one questioning and the questioning itself. Hence absolutely everything is placed in question. This is the pervasive questions about being itself raised to conceptual form. Therefore, in raising the metaphysical questions, human becomes aware of what one is in the ground of one's essence. The necessity of these questions, based on the fact that human has access to being only as something questionable. The ground of this necessity is not any questions, for human can avoid asking a particular questions, but one can't avoid the questions about being in its totality. One has to ask the questions about being in its totality want to be at all. Hence human exists as the questions about being in his questions being present and offers that self as that which is questioned and questions, and withdraws itself as that which necessarily remains in questions. Hence human is the being of the questions. In this being of the questions, being reveals itself and conceals itself in its own known questionables. When we ask questions, we not only know how things are in relations to us, but also how they are absolutely in themselves, what it is in itself. In this way the conditions absolute being puts an end to human questions. The very act of questioning reveals even if we only explicitly inquire about a relative validity of our own personal need. This relative validity itself is posited hence the horizon must be unlimited penetrate into the intensively deep seat core of being. We must core of being. We must reach the extensively widest range of being, that which constitutes the ultimate unconditioned reality of things is being is the ultimate reality, both intensively and extensively. The horizon of being within which we ask the questions as questions is limited. Being as knowing and not knowing. Every question implies that we known about being, for we can't questions about something of which we do not know anything at all. However, the questions also presupposes that we do not know about being. In this way, questions manifest both the identity of being and knowing, and the distinctions between them. In other words, our knowledge about being consists in the identity of being and knowing, and our not knowing about being consists in the non-identity of being and knowing. Being as the cause of the continent beings. Every being is necessary and not necessary is not necessary insofar as it is a finite being, but if it is necessary, it is a necessary as being. Then insofar as it can no longer not be it necessarily is. Insofar as it is, this is possible only it. Every being possesses something which determines it to the necessarily of being. Otherwise it would by itself be both necessary and not necessary, which is contradictory. Therefore the cognate being requires a positive element by which it is determined to the necessary of being. It requires a ground, a sufficient reasons of its being. Continent beings do not have their ground in themselves. Beings as the cause of the continent beings. Every being is necessary and not necessary. It is not necessary insofar as it is a finite being. But if it is necessary, it is as necessary as being. Then insofar and insofar as it is, it can no longer not be it necessarily it is insofar as it is. This is possible only if every being possesses something which determines it to the necessary of the necessity of being necessity of being, otherwise it would by itself. Then insofar as it is, it can no longer not be it necessarily is insofar as it is. This is possible only if every being possesses something which determines it to the necessary of being, otherwise it would by itself be both necessary and not necessary, which is not necessary, which is the necessary being, otherwise it would by itself be both necessary and the necessary, which is contradictory. Therefore every continent being requires a positive element by which it is determined to the necessity of being. It requires a ground of sufficient reason of its being. Continent beings do not have their ground in themselves. Their ground it lies outside of themselves. They are posited into being by something else to bring forth some reality which goes beyond one's own being and essence is to act. The continent being is the product of the activity of some other being. It exterior cause is an exient cause which brings it about. Consequently every continent being which is necessarily posited into being by an efficient cause by being itself 1.3 characteristics of essence is the principles of determinations which makes a thing what is. Fundamentally is the concept originates with Aristotle 322 BC, who used the Greek expressions to tin literally the what it is to be, or sometimes the shorter phrase to tist literally the what it is. This phrase presented such difficulties for its Latin translators. They very coined the word essenta to represent the whole expression. For Aristotle and his scholastic followers, the notions of essence is closely linked to that the definition horismus. The English word essence comes from the Latin essentia, which was coined from esse to be by ancient Roman scholars in order to translate the Greek phrase to tin. Enia, like his teacher Plato 428 to 338 BCE. Aristotle's philosophy aims at the universal. Aristotle, however, found the universal in particular things, which he called the essence of things. Will Plato finds that the universal exist apart from particular things and is related to them as their prototype or example. Or Plato more mystical or higher power. Aristotle more essentialist the form of things within. For Aristotle, therefore, the philosophic method implies the ascent from the study of particular phenomena to be knowledge of senses will implies the ascent from the study of particular phenomena to the knowledge of essence will for Plato. The philosophic method means the descent from of knowledge of universal forms of our ideas to a contemplation of particular imitations of them. For Aristotle, form of still refers to the unconditional basis of our phenomena but is instantaneous in a particular substance. According to Thomas Aquinas, 1225 to 70 per essence or quantity or quantity is that through which a thing is constituted in its proper genus or species. Essences is also called form for the certitude of a thing is signified through its form. The same thing is also called nature. Nature is what we call everything that can in any way be captured by the intellect, for a thing is not intelligible except through its definitions and essence. Every substance is a nature, but the term nature used in this way seems to signify the essence of a thing as it is ordered to the proper operations of the thing. For Edmund Husserl, 1859 to 1938, essence is ideal. However, ideal means that essence is the intentional object of this consequences. Essence must be distinguished from actual existence, just as the pure ego must be distinguished from the physiological of empirical ego. Essence are non-real, will facts are real. The realm of transcendentally reduced phenomena is non-real, will the realm of actual experience is real. Externalisms receive existence from Jean Paul Sartre's 1905 to 80 statement that for human beings existence precedes essence inasmuch as essence is a com- cornerstone of all metaphysical philosophy and the grounding of rationalism. Sartre's statement was a refutation of the philosophical system that had come before him. Instead of isness generating, actually the argued that existence and actually come first and the essence is derived afterward. In Indian metaphysical perspectives, a distinction is made between one's swadharma essence and swabhava mental habits and conditionings of ego personality. Swabhava is the nature of a person, which is the result of his or her samskaras, impressions created in the mind due to one's interaction with the external world. The sanskaras create habits and mental models, and those become our nature. Will there is another kind of swabhava, that is a pure internal quality smaran. We are here focusing only on the swabhava that was created due to sanskaras, because to discover the pure internal swabhava and smarana, one should become aware of one's sanskara and have control over them. Dharma is derived from the root dhar, to hold. It is that which holds an entity together. That is, dharma is that which gives integrity to an entity and holds the core quality and identity, essence, and the form and functions of that entity. Dharma is also defined as righteousness as well as duty to do one's dharma is to be righteous, to do one's dharma is to do one's duty, express one's essence. Indeed, the concept of Buddhist emptiness is the strong assertion that all phenomena are empty of any essence, demonstrating that anti-essentialism lies at the very root of Buddhist praxis. Therefore, within these schools, it is the innate belief in essence that is considered to be an afflictive obsession which serves as the root of all suffering. However, the schools also rejects the tenets of idealism of materialism. Instead, the ideas of Instead, the ideas of truth or existence, along with any assertions that depend upon them, are limited to their functions within the context and conventions that assert them somewhat akin to relativism or pragmatism. Essence as nature. Sensible things are individuals as they exist in themselves in the real world. These sensible things are known by the intellect in abstractions from their destinations, designations in a particular matter. So abstract they are still composed of matter and form. They are conceptualized with the content of matter and form in general, but not in particular. In so abstracting from the particular, they abstract from place. The nature considered as a potency to being is called the thing's essence, which is abstracted with vibration through which is abstracted does not fully considered with the thing. The essence abstracted and transcendence from excludes the individually. It represents only a part of the thing, the essence and the individuality go together to compose the thing. Essence abstracted with precision can't be predicated of the thing. For instance, one can't say man is humanity anymore than one can say that one is one's arm. Rather, one has one's humanity. In this sense, a thing is not its own essence, but its essence.